Hi guys. If I say the word economy, what comes to your mind? I'll tell you what came to my mind when I was little. I thought that economy is all about money, currency, coins, and a little bit of study and observation, of course, made it clear that it has to do a lot with two forces: the output, that is the products, and their money value. When Why are we saying money value? Because not everyone can produce everything or produce at least something so that he or she can exchange it with somebody else, as it happened in the barter system. So if I were to put two things in the equation, only two variables, I would say that economy is about the value, the money value of products, and how much products are you able to produce. So let's just say the cornerstone of economy rests on two major equations, and that is how much is a country is able to produce and what will be the price tag of it. So that will give us the money value of products, and how much money is the central bank able to print, and how much is it circulating in the market. So these two things can be equated. What is the money value of the products? That will be equal to the money that's circulating and the money that's printed, which ultimately circulates in the market. So these are the two things, right? Now, there is a big risk when a central government prints money. Why? Because I'll say that when I was a young girl and when I was a baby, I thought that why is one country rich while the other poor? Why not our country print? Why shouldn't it print a lot of money so that it becomes rich? There is a catch to it, and I understood it only when I got older and studied about things, that if you print a lot of money and there is not a corresponding amount of quantum of output increase in the market, what would happen? There would be a lot of price rise, because, for example, there's 100 rupees more in circulation while the output has remained the same. So what would the manufacturers, the producers, and the service renders would do? They would know that there's extra money with people, so they'll raise the price of their products. Now, what happens when you raise the price of your product? Your product would lose its importance in the export market, because there are people who would buy those products that are cheaper. So your exports would go down. Secondly, it's not just about exports. It's about the domestic economy as well. Not everyone is employed. Second, not everyone has a good salary. So all those people who don't earn or have very little salaries. The little is in the sense they don't earn much. They don't have enough liquidity with themselves. They will suffer on account of rise in the prices. So that these are the two major problems that would arise. Of course, there are many tertiary problems. So the government, all the time, it's looking for keeping the price level down. Now, if you notice, or if you just Google it, you'll find most developed countries have lesser inflation than developing nations or underdeveloped nations. Why is that so? That's so because there is not corresponding increase in the output, which raises the price of products, and the problems that are attached to it, as I just mentioned, they enter the equation, they enter the building. So this is one big symptom. This is one big symptom that something is wrong with the economy if the prices are rising. All right. The second thing, what should India do when if you compare it with countries like in Europe, UK, Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, and France, and okay, I already said UK, right? So some of these countries have inflation up to 1 point something percent. US and Japan has a really low inflation. Even US it usually doesn't rise above 3. We know that R rises well above 3, and we have witnessed that many a times in past. So that's that. So you get the drift, right? So we are not able to produce as much as the developed nations, so the prices rise. Where do these prices rise? It's important to understand, and in a single number of inflation that is making rounds in the magazines, they don't give you a clear-cut idea. Like the current inflation is between 3.5 to 4% or 4.5. Now, how does it make things clearer? Does it mean that all the products that were about that were priced around 100, now they're 104? No, that's not true. It's the average number. What you need to do is to find out where exactly the inflation is actually taking place. Like in our country, not just in our country, but if we focus on our country, because we're talking about our country, in all every time you're talking about economy, there are few sectors that you're talking about: agriculture, manufacturing, services, and the knowledge sector. So what you need to, when you are out there, to understand where exactly prices are rising in agriculture and manufacturing, you need to see 3 different levels. You need to see, is the price rising at the producers level, or is it rising at the wholesalers, distributors level, or the retailers level? There are most of the products, what usually happens is the ratio of the price rise is the producer's cost of production is, let's say, 10. So it would sell the manufacturer his product at 20, and usually at this level, the wholesalers level, the prices usually double up. So the wholesalers or the distributors would completely double it up. Like he would make it 40, and about 30% of it would be charged by the retailers. Things are more in control when you have packaged goods, because there is MRP that is written at the back. You can't really raise the price above that. But what really happens when you are selling vegetables, and then there's dearth of supply, like it happened in the case of onion in December 2019. The prices of onions really shot to the roof. So what happened then? Even after the supply increased, the wholesalers continued to charge a lot. So there is a greater chance of inflation caused by wholesalers and distributors when you are talking about products that are not packaged. But you really can't package vegetables and certain other loose items. But there has to be a greater degree, there has to be some kind of you got to put some kind of a policy in place where you can see through where exactly the price rise is taking place. The same happens in case of manufacturing. Plus, manufacturing is also, it always falls prey in case of consumer durables to the business cycles. If the demand goes less, the investment goes less, and when the investment goes less, obviously the supply would be less and people will lose their jobs. So it's a more tricky thing there. It's the service sector which is the weakest link. You really can't scan whether you are looted, whether the inflation is stark. Because how would you find whether the plumber who's come to your place, is it plumber or plumber, whatever, the guy who mends your tap, is he charging you the right amount? Is the school that is charging you a lot for your child's education, is charging a lot for your child's education? Are they really right? Are they really right to charge the amount they charge? And then the knowledge sector. The knowledge sector usually comprises, it actually comprises of people who are into R&D, into research and development. So mostly the inflation in these two sectors, that is services and knowledge sector, happens because there is not enough skilled labor, trained labor, educated labor. That's what happens. And if when you go to a restaurant for a small little meal, in certain places you end up spending above 3,000, around 5,000, which is ridiculous because people don't even earn that much in the other strata of the there are certain stratum of the society where people don't even earn that much in a month's time. So that's there. So service sector, I believe, is the weakest link, and there should be a policy in place to see that people don't charge above a certain amount. The inflation has to be contained at this level. And I don't have to go very far. I even in my own circumstances, it has been found that the maximum saving, the maximum amount has been spent on education. Second, on getting certain loans for buying any fixed asset. So this was it. Now, let me come to the second equation, which really can solve a lot of things. I said that the output has to be increased. In India's case, it hasn't quite increased because the aggregate demand, the collective demand, hasn't shown a lot of increase, the requisite increase. Aggregate demand, when the demand increases, why does it increase? So if you want to increase the output, you've got to increase all these components of the aggregate demand. You got to increase the government spending, because when the government spends, it employs people to carry out certain projects. These projects will not only help and facilitate the citizens of the country, will also provide employment to people who will eventually buy things and get the ball rolling. I mean, they will raise the demand for products. Then there is investment. Here we are talking about the private investment, and the investment into the physical assets like machineries, infrastructure, again, such stuff. So and this is private. Then there is consumption, and then there is net export. This particular line shows the relative importance of these components in India's case. So the government spending's importance to GDP is government spending to GDP ratio is 14%. The relative importance we are talking about, and the investments is 30%, consumption, private consumption 60%, and trading 43%, which is pretty high. Why? Because even though its importance is high, and it is high on the account because there are a lot of services that are exported out. You've heard about people there is outsourcing for software in the software industry, which India caters to. So it earns on that account, but it spends a lot on the account of oil import. So the actual aggregate demand that it contributes is minus 8%, which is negative, and that is not good. Second thing is consumption is quite vibrant, yes, 60%. Investment is 33%, and the government spending is 11%. Government spending contributes 11% to the aggregate demand of the country. But if we compare it to the developed nations like United States, United Kingdom, Germany, Switzerland, France, Japan, you'll see that the government spending, this component is almost between 40 to 45% in their country. They spend 40 to 45% of their GDP in order to raise the aggregate demand. What does our country spend? 14%, and the finance minister has said that we will not spend more. We've already this is what we can spend, and that is it. And then investment, The private investment 25%, ours is 30%, which is good, but we are not exactly comparable to these developed countries. We are more comparable to China, about which I'll talk a while later. And then consumption. Consumption is in our country, in the developed countries, it's between 50 to 60%. In our country, it is 60%, which is good enough. And the net export their relative importance is 25% to 30%. Here, the relative importance is 43%, but the contribution to the aggregate demand is minus 8%. Now, I was talking about China. China being our neighbor and starting relatively later in terms of liberalizations and stuff. So we are more comparable to China, and its government spending is 14%, but the investment rate is 44%. It's focusing on investment quite a bit. And that's because their saving rate is high. How do you get money for investment? You get it by saving rate. You raise your saving rate and your investment rate would rise. In our case, the investment rate has slid down because the saving rate has slid down. Saving rate has slid down because I just told you the services have gotten expensive. So if you go deeper into the ocean of numbers, you'll find that's where the problem is. In India's case, the problem is the service sector, where you're not able to say no to people who give extremely expensive services, because there's dearth of quality. There's dearth of quality in the services that are rendered, so you end up paying quite a bit. And sometimes it is baffling how in metropolitan cities there are certain... You got to excuse me for that sound, that noise. There's some construction work going on outside. Anyways, so there are certain pockets in a metropolitan cities where the same service would cost far lesser than some other pockets. You go to certain restaurants and hotels there, and a small meal would cost around 5,000. I find this is ridiculous. So there has to be some policy in place which would scan these services, because it's really ridiculous how they are charging, and without anyone to be answerable to. They should be held accountable, just like in case of manufactured and packaged products. There is an MRP. There should be some upper ceiling. In case of services, there are schools that are charging ridiculous amounts of money for teaching, for educating children. What can I possibly say? I don't know what to say. I'll just wind up the video. Anyway, so this is the service sector is what I think is the weakest link. The second thing, as I said, the government spending is quite low in our country, while it should not be, because the whole world works on the principle of harmonic resonance. If you are doing something good, I'll learn from you. If I'm not ready to learn, saying, oh, I don't have money, so that's not the right approach. If you don't have money, augment, or at least spend it in the right direction. There has to be, it has been found by the researches done by RBI. I'm just expecting some other banging sound from outside, so I want to wind up this video. So anyways, so there are researches done by RBI. Here you go. Here you go. Anyways, so these researchers show that there is the multipliers effect, because of raising the tax slab is in negative. If you raise the tax slab, that's not going to contribute to the multipliers effect in the country. What you really need to spend on is give more money to the states rather than the center, because the local governments are more successful in bringing the multipliers effect and a higher multipliers effect, and in a lesser span of time, just 3 years, while the center takes 5 years to bring the multipliers effect into on the complete peak. And there has to be more money spent in the capital, rather than revenue. So instead of giving too much salary to people in the PSUs, which I've already made a video about, and gosh, okay, right, for the inefficient work that they do. You would agree with me, there are post offices, there are electricity departments, there are universities. Universities are the worst of all. The efficiency level there, barring a few people, barring a few employees, is dismal, is really bad. Abysmal? Okay, whatever. Anyways, so the efficiency level has to be increased. People do not deserve the kind of salaries that they get, so that has to be managed better, or reduce their working hours along with their salary, or and give somebody else. Let there be rotation there, let there be shifts. This has to be improved. Second thing is, less money has to go into defense, more into capital. Wrong timing. Anyways, so capital is taken care of. I guess I pretty much lost the track. Now let me talk about the net export. Net export is quite less, and there has to be a diversification. For diversification, you need to build on your knowledge sector, because there are people, we don't have oil reserves in our country. We definitely have a lot of intelligent minds in our country. There are people in other countries, in Western countries, who have managed to produce more oil from, gosh, one last time, okay, who can produce oil from things that you can't even think about, like sugarcane and their coconut, whatever. This is just an example. So we need to cut down on our oil imports. We may not come into the position of exporting oil outside, though we do export a lot of its derivative, but there is a very high tax that we charged on petrol that we give away, that the government gives away to its own people. Anyway, so this is it. So if I were to summarize, please, there should be a policy in place that can put a cap on the prices that service renders charge to people, because that's the reason why saving rate has really come down, and since the saving rate has come down, the investment rate has come down. The second thing, diversification has to be there, and then the government spending has to be done in the right place. Even if it can't improve, if the quantum cannot be increased, because it's already mismanaged the money so much. So of course, whatever money that's already in the system can be better organized. There has to be a streamlining here. All right, thank you so much. Bye bye.